Hello, and welcome to the 1912 Exiles podcast. Today, this is going to be a very different podcast episode. Later on, we will talk about some of the recent news and the matches and today's win, of course. But we start with the awful news this week that our very dear friend and podcaster in arms, Ollie Allen, passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly on Tuesday. Ollie's death has taken all of us, I think not just us on the podcast crew, but the whole wider Newport fan base really by surprise and by shock, and it's hit us all hard. Obviously, our thoughts, our condolences with his family at what must be a truly dreadful time for them. We cannot begin to imagine what they're going through. Any of them who need anything that we can do to help, to support in whatever happens in the future, then reach out to us or anyone in the fan base, and you've got friends here. Ollie was so well known and so well loved, and to lose him at the young age of 23 is heartbreaking. We want to devote the majority of the day to talking about Ollie and our memories of him, of which we've got many. So I'm Ian, our host today, and we've got a cracking podcast crew with us, in no particular order, saying good evening to Jack. Jack, how you doing?
Hi all. Perfect intro, Ian. It's a terrible thing to happen, but there are many friends of which we've seen pouring in so much love from every corner of Newport and the wider world and the community. And we're all here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jack. And Alfie, all right, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, I just thought I'd say the same sort of thing. The intro is, top class, and if anyone does need, someone to speak to, then we're all here, and my DMs and stuff are open.
Absolutely, yeah. Hi, Reese.
Yeah, evening all. I think, as everyone's just said, that's a fantastic opening. Thank you, Ian. And just to everyone who's kind of shown their support as well on the socials, we've all been reading all of the lovely things that you've been saying about Ollie, and I know the family have as well, and that really does mean the world to all of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, totally, Reese, totally. And last but obviously by no means least, the good doctor. Hi, Ed.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Yeah, it's been a rough old week, I think, for all of us, of course. But as others have said, it's really underlined what a family Newport County fans are, the wider football and Newport community is, and I think we've all taken a lot of comfort from that. Absolutely.
And as sad as the situation is, I think the one thing that I've always been thinking of as I've been chatting about to other people about this horrible situation is when I think of Ollie. He had a big smile that I came to know and love in the away end around the country as Ollie was schlepping around. And it sounds ridiculous to talk about joy at such a terrible, terrible time. But joy was what Ollie brought to the game. He brought joy to the people around him, to this podcast, to me personally, to the Rose Ed community of which I'm part and which Ollie was part of, as a fan base. So, we should never forget that, as difficult as this time is, Ollie brought joy. And I wonder what, I could talk for probably a long time about Ollie, but I don't want to monopolize things tonight at all. It'd be useful if we could all maybe think of something that we might want to say, a little quip or a little memory of Ollie that under the hazel or whatever it may be. Ed, do you want to? You gathered people under the hazel. Would you like to say something?
Well, I think people gathered under the hazel long before I started going along. I was a latecomer to that, but I'll talk about that in a second. I think I first met Ollie. Well, I know I first met through Ollie, as most of us did, through Twitter, where, right from the start, he was a very strong supporter, not just of the podcast, but of the Amber Army channel. He was a really engaging and funny voice on football. So although I probably didn't speak to him in person for a while, by the time that I did have a proper conversation with him for the first time, I felt like I already knew him. And reading tributes that people have been leaving, and we've seen hundreds of them, I don't think I was the only person of whom that was true. And one of the pleasures over the years was watching Ollie grow in confidence through following county and through the friends that he made. And by God, he made a lot of them. And that I think was largely because he was such a warm, empathetic person. He didn't have a bad word to say about anyone, and also rarely amongst football fans. He didn't get drawn into the cynicism that affects a lot of us a lot of the time. Anyone who heard him on the pod will say it was always Ollie who'd find a positive, even if the team had just got gubbed 4-0 in the rain and it was going to be a 6-hour bus ride home. Ollie would find something to be cheerful about, and bloody hell, if you can surround yourself in life with people like that, the world is a better place. From a podcast point of view, Ollie was a dream. I always knew that if I stuck a microphone under his nose, he'd always have something to say. It would always be insightful, and it would always be funny. So he quickly became a go-to interviewee for the podcast, and he was always great value, and that's why we loved having him on. But my favourite memory of Ollie, it wasn't actually watching Newport County at all. It was a couple of years back when Newport City got to their playoff final, and I drove out to Bridgend thinking, well, it's a hot May evening, I might as well go. I probably won't see anyone I know, but it beats sitting at home and watching the telly. And sure enough, I got through the turnstile and the first person I saw was Ollie. And immediately I had that sense of, oh, great, my mate's here. This is going to be a fun evening. And it was, we bumped into Diesel, I think, and Mark Vickery and a few others. And it was just a stress-free evening having cold beers on a hot night with Ollie's encyclopedic knowledge of the Cymru leagues to make sense of it all. He was just a wonderful, lovely man. And when I'm back at Rodney Parade on Tuesday, I have to say, I'm dreading going through the turnstiles and not seeing Ollie there in that usual pre-match huddle in the concourse. It won't feel right. But what a privilege to have known him.
I might follow that if that's okay with everyone. I might just chip on the end of that because I can reminisce with all of that, and I want to go back to that confidence thing because obviously I live up in Leeds, so I don't get back to Newport very often. But I knew of Ollie, as you say, through the social media presence. And he was brought into the Rose Ed fan community, which is basically a load of old duffers. Sorry, Stu. And we were like, it was this young whippersnapper who seems to know everything about Newport County. I've been going for 45 years. He seemed to know more than I did. I was like, it was terrible. He was always pulling me up on stuff I was getting wrong. It was incredible. And I knew that he hadn't been away much. I knew Stu and Chris, massive friends of the pod, encouraged him to go to his first away game, which was Forest Green. And I don't think Ollie had been too far from Newport. He was a bit of a home bird, I think, at the time. And we won 3-0 there, so I think he thought, "Oh, this is easy, isn't it? These away games." But then he started coming up. He started coming up north, and it was always a laugh when he was coming up. And he was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Ollie, put a coat on for God's sake! It's colder up here." And he would come up, and he was, as you say, you'd walk in the away end, having schlepped there from wherever. And he was there with a smile. It was absolutely brilliant to get to know him. And I remember shoving, I don't have a microphone, shoved my phone under him and said, "Oh, come on, Ollie, have a chat for the podcast." And he was like, "Oh, no." He had a bit of a stutter. He's, "Oh, no." I said, "Honestly, be fine. Just trust me, Ollie, be absolutely fine. We'll just talk like this." And once he got going, well, he couldn't shut him up because he was brilliant then. And as you say, his knowledge was incredible. He was great in the tactics truck. His ability, which we laughed about all the time, to always put the away kit on somehow that the players were going to be playing in, is crazy. I mean, I'm a positive guy. People moan at me sometimes, so I'm too positive when we're really rubbish. But wow, for positivity, like Ollie, what's the score? We're away at Brantford on a Monday night, and we're at top of the league, and we're going to get on 3-1. We're going to win 3-1. His positivity was absolutely fantastic. And I also remember. I remember most those games on the Mondays and Tuesday nights for me when, not many travel, it's cold, you're in some godforsaken, Larry-esque northern place. And going in, as I've done that for years, but going in and seeing Ollie there was fabulous, particularly last season, which was his amazing every game, 6,500 mile magnus opus of a journey around the country, watching us lose basically every single time we played away. When it became obviously that whole sort of gallows humour stuff that we developed through that, and with Dave from Artedion and it got us through that, and that sort of camaraderie was incredible. But I do remember, and it's one I thought probably the final thing I want to say at this point, and it sort of goes out to his mum really as well, because as people know, love my music and have been a chat sometimes on socials in terms of bands I've seen or records from back in the day. And, I remember putting up a 7-inch by Fly Screen, who were a Newport band from the sort of late 80s, early 90s. Nobody knows. There was only about 10 people who knew who they were. And then there was this person commented on socials, "Oh, great single," and whatever. I was like, really? And I remember chatting to Ollie and I said, like, do you know this person on social media, Ollie? She's like, I'm pretty sure they're from Newport because they seem to sort of follow us on the pod and whatever. And he turned around and just said, yeah, that's my mum. So we were just howling with laughter that this other character I had no idea who it was, who was interested in what we were doing, and it was Ollie's mum. And, but he just laughed about it. And we just had such good times that I will, like you, Ed, the first away game I go to, particularly, a Salford away on a Tuesday night or something, I'll be turning to Ollie to try and explain to me what the hell is going on out there as we're getting drubbed 4-0 again, and try and make some sense of the madness. And I will miss that tremendously. Yeah, that's my stuff. Alfie, would you like to say anything? Anyone want to chip in?
Yeah, I'll have a go. Like Ed said, like most people, met him through Twitter about must be about 5 years ago, and then just got to know him from just being on the bus. Really, when I stopped going away, I would listen to the podcast and all these, tactical genius mind and just everything would keep me in the loop with what's been going on, even if we have lost like 5-0 to Accrington on Tuesday night, stuff like that. But it's for me because we were similar ages, like we'd have similar sort of things, like same football team. You like wrestling, we'd speak about that sometimes. It's just a strange one to me that I won't see him stood outside the marquee. But this week's just been like reflecting. Like we might think, like we keep losing every week, but going to the football is such like a luxury. We don't know about it. We don't think about that until it's taken away. And what the club did today, I thought was that, and that is Newport County. That is what, to me, that is the club. The way they just remembered him and everything they've done and all the donations and everything is just been top class. And it's sad circumstances, but I just think it shows how well the football and the wider Newport football community has come from.
Yeah, top words, Alfie. Top words. Reese, I'll throw it to you. Do you want to bring anything you'd like to add to what we've said?
Yeah, you guys have done a really good job there. I think you all knew Ollie a little better than me. Because I sit over the other side, I didn't have that kind of under the stand moment with him, but I always love listening to his contributions. And I was listening back to episode 227, which was Ian's last match diary from last season, and Ollie's talking about his points per mile, and someone who can find a positive in, I think it was 472 points per mile for the season. What an absolute gentleman. And his contributions were always brilliant. Like you say, his tactical insight, his ability to just find a positive, his wit, you can't replace that. And it's going to be a big hole that we're all going to feel for some time, I think. And just to echo what Alfie said there about the club, the support from the club and the team, and, from even the away players today, all supporting that minute's applause on the 23rd minute really shows kind of that football community. And I think Alfie absolutely nailed it there as well about, it's not really about what happens on the pitch. That's not why we go to football, is it? We go to football for that sense of belonging. We're a part of something. We don't actually play for Newport County. Whether they win or lose doesn't actually make any tangible difference to our lives. But the fact that we are part of something, we are part of that group that supports the club is what unites us. And it's amazing to see how the club has pulled together in what's a really terrible situation.
Yeah, absolutely, Reece. And that before I bring you in, Jack, just a really quick one, that we've also had lots and lots of fans and other podcasts from other clubs also making contact with us. And as some people will know, I've got good friends on the View from the Findus pod in Grimsby who've sent me some lovely private messages. But, they said that they got really invested last year on Ollie's points per mile thing. And they were saying that they really enjoyed, his little quips that he had, and that sort of grim determination to slog around, Britain, watching basically the most rubbish team, brought a lot of joy to people who weren't even Newport supporters. So yeah, Ollie's voice travelled far and wide. Jack.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else on the pod quite enjoys when you come across a fellow Newport fan or someone who's just interested in what your interests are, and you'll say, well, I help produce or record a podcast, and oh yeah, okay, and your gold standard for how absolutely bananas is that, yeah, we've got this guy on the cast. He's only seen 1 point in 447 miles per average on a season. Was just like, and they go, wow, it really is. And he still goes. Yes, he still goes. Look, I'm still reading a bit from today. I put my face in the stingies and went straight into the marquee, grabbed a Guinness in his honour, made my way to the corner where the usual huddle is. And it was such a large shadow cast and such a large feeling of missing in that moment where it's the first game back and there were no words. It was a very difficult time. But I, like us all, have been on that roller coaster this week. And I, like Alfie, have come away from having this renewed sense of really cherishing, as hard as they are to cherish, Newport. Cherishing the small things, being able to go and get a Guinness and talk to your mate under the hazel, being able to get frustrated at Spellman and surprised that he pulls that performance out of his back pocket that none of us were expecting. Startled that the keeper is doing a tactical tumble in the 22nd minute, which led on to fantastically what I would imagine, as we were saying in the preamble before we hit record, Ian, which was he probably would have hated that tumble. But again, to echo what's already been said and already known in the Twitterverse and elsewhere in social media, the flooding of love, the flooding of people coming up with stories about their own interactions, and he was everywhere. He was liking everything, reposting everything, talking to people in the DMs about things that were not necessarily Newport based, but with a passion, with a curiosity, with a love. And it was just someone you wanted to be around. It's just someone you look forward to having to chat with, and I certainly did, on the limited amounts of times that I interact with him. And it's horrible, but being there today is a privilege. And I'm trying not to choke here, but winning today felt great, but so bittersweet, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for. This is not easy to record this, and I really appreciate everyone, all of us, trying to talk about Ollie in the way we are. We are, and we've said, we as a podcast, we've put a GoFundMe together in memory of Ollie, and we're massively thankful for everybody who's chipped in to that. The proceeds of that will go to Ollie's family, and we are in touch with his family. So at a point at which there's anything they want to say about funeral arrangements or anything like that, and they're happy to share, then we will share that as well, but only obviously with their permission. And we want to just again, reiterate our love, our solidarity, and our support to his family and his friends. Okay, we also said we'd discuss football matters tonight. With news about Ollie, I think it's, in some ways it's the least thing we want to do. But obviously in moments like these, for many of us, it's the camaraderie of football. It's the warmth of the football family that gets us through. And I'm absolutely convinced that Ollie would want us to talk about the win, the Antwi transfer, and the 15 minutes of injury time that cost us the game at Gillingham last week. He'd want to talk about those things. So we're going to try and switch our minds a little bit and chat about the football that's gone on over the last week. So Gillingham, a game I was watching on that one, and I was like, we set off on fire. We played them off the park in the first bit, and then they came into it, and they missed sitters. We took the lead, they equalised. The linesman's gone off, or the fourth official, whatever it was. There's 15 minutes of injury time. We're 2-1 up. Antwi does a surprise thing and scores a goal. And yet somehow we managed to lose the game 3-2. So trying to cast our minds back a little to that game, ignoring today for a minute. How much of a sucker punch was that? I mean, I felt pretty deflated after it, but I also felt that there was some green shoots in that performance as well. Does anybody want to come in on that game?
I can. I didn't actually watch it, unfortunately. But yeah, I kind of had the roller coaster just kind of following it on the live text, and it just seemed like one of those that you kind of felt the momentum, and it was reminiscent of some of those games earlier in the season where we conceded, and then certainly reading the text, it just felt like we fell apart once we conceded. The pressure was just building. It's disappointing considering we were in the lead to then lose 3-2. And what I did like was Fuchs in his post-match press conference saying that he wasn't going to kind of drag Tan over the coals. It's a young player in his first game, and you have to accept that he made a mistake, and he probably feels awful about it. A local lad playing his first game for his hometown club, and he's basically just cost them the game. I think for many a young boy, that is the stuff of nightmares. So I think Fuchs did the right thing, really, and just kind of back him. Probably the lesson there is don't compound a mistake with another mistake. So he had a bad touch. Or first of all, he should have just volleyed it over his head away. He took a touch. The touch was bad. Then he followed up the bad touch with a rash tackle. There wasn't a lot of contact, but it's in the box. The attacker's gone down. You give the referee a decision to make. So I think that's probably the lesson there, isn't it? Is if you were coaching him, you'd say, right, you've made a mistake. Don't compound a mistake with another one. But yeah, disappointing result. It always is, isn't it? When you take the lead and ultimately end up coming away with nothing. Even a draw would have been satisfactory, but yeah, taking the lead and coming away with nothing's a bit of a gut punch.
I do think, though, one of the things that was interesting for me watching that game was, Tan made that mistake, but he also set up Antwi's goal. He looks a very lively fish to me. I think he's going to be a really interesting player in the second half of the season. And the other player, I'm sure we're going to talk about him, the Chesterfield game. The other player that really impressed me in that game was Biggins, who we were all sweating, and we are probably still sweating over the loss of Sammy Braybrook. But Harrison Biggins looked a really useful outfit when we, I thought, away at Gillingham, and combined well with Smith. And again, there's some real positive signs there. We haven't yet started the new front three at all yet. So there was definite positive signs for me as well. Having Baker back, Brennan coming back, Shepherd coming back. We're looking a little bit more useful. Okay, well, we lost that game 3-2, and then in the week we had a trust meeting as well. So it's all been happening. At which the main vote was whether the supporters trust was willing to potentially sell a proportion of its shares. Now that vote was carried. Ed, can I bring you in on all things Constitution?
Yes, constitutional expert of the pod.
Yeah.
So I watched online. Childcare issues meant that I couldn't be there in person, sadly. And it was a good conversation, I thought. I think the actual resolution element of the meeting got discussed for well over an hour, so no one can say that it wasn't fully explored. One thing that did happen, which I think was important and was well handled, was a verbal agreement that any final decision to sell shares to an investor will be subject to trust members ratifying it. So on Thursday, there was an agreement to the principle, but no shares will actually be sold until we get the details of who wants to buy them, how much they're going to pay for it, how many they're going to buy. And I think that's very welcome because, selling a portion of the trust shares for £1 million to a benign Newport-based football fan is clearly different to selling them for £3.50 to a voracious venture capitalist. So that was an important clarification, and it was really clear that the trust board recognised why it was important. As for the vote on the principle, yeah, you're right. It was won comfortably, I think, by 80-something votes to 4. As it happens, I was one of the 4 who voted against, but that's okay. We can all have different views and disagree. The whole point of having a trust is so that they can act according to the wishes of the majority of fans, which clearly they will do. So we wait to see what happens next, I guess. It doesn't sound like something's going to happen overnight, and I think that's probably a good thing. We can't afford to get distracted from 4th Division survival by what might happen next. The budget is locked in now anyway, so let's focus on the rest of the transfer window, turning the form around so we can stay up, and then hopefully by the summer there might be more investment for next year wherever we find ourselves. So I think that was probably the key takeaways from where I was watching anyway.
I think the key, you've said the absolute key thing there for me, because what was really worrying me is that we've only got just over the 25% that we own as trust members. And we need over 25% in order to block any lunacy. So if we're going to sell some, it's going to take us below that 25%, almost certainly. So we need to be really, really clear and confident before we do that. And I think the principle that the trust will lay out, should there be an offer to buy some, who that is, what they're going to do, what they're going to bring, and that we have a vote on that as a trust, I think is going to be absolutely critical.
Can I just ask Ed as to why he voted against the motion?
I suppose the cynic in me would say that the difficulties in which we find ourselves are as a result of Hugh Jenkins's business model. So that sounds like a Hugh Jenkins problem to solve rather than a trust problem to solve. The overwhelming majority of other trust fans probably took the view that, whilst that may be the case, the impact on Newport County, which is the thing that we all want to see succeed in this, is the risk is too great to stymie the opportunity for investment. And I can understand that and I can respect that. But I think if it had been me, my instinct would have been to have said, well, this is your problem, Hugh. If you want investment in the club to come in, then you need to diminish some of your own shareholding and have more voices on board rather than insisting that you retain overall majority and overall control. But like I say, I respect the view of people who argued the other way, and that's what happens in a democracy. So I'm quite happy to go along with the majority, but if people want my view, that's my view.
What about the 21% of the owners? Where because they're disorganized, we must sell ours, we must just dilute our share. Just because we're organized doesn't mean we should be the ones to bear the brunt of it. At the same time, I've got to play devil's advocate and think I've seen a stat out there that realistically the trust only contributes a very small amount of turnover. So realistically, then what's our skin in the game? And then at the same time, my brain goes on the other side and wonders what the other 21% are doing, and wish that they would wake up and do something about it as well, because it is existential. If we do drop down from the league, it is a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, I will say all of those issues and more were discussed in the trust meeting, and I should imagine that the video of that may go up online. I don't know 100% whether it will, because they may just say it's for members, but the decision was made after a lengthy discussion of all of those points. So, without wanting to kind of relitigate it here, yeah, we did tease out a lot of those different issues, and people had that opportunity to have that discussion in the open.
Good stuff. We've also had some interesting transfer and retirement news, which all I think will play a part in what might happen in the next few few days of the transfer window. So obviously James Clark announced his immediate retirement, but he's been a fantastic servant, hasn't he, over the last few years? I mean, he came to us towards the end of his career, isn't he? But what's he done? Three or four seasons for us, and he's been great, hasn't he? He's had a few injury problems this year, but he has been a master of the dark. Watching him with the dark arts has been one of the joys over the last couple of seasons for me, I think. So I think all our thanks go to Mr. Clark, and I think maybe we ought to try and get him on the pod and have a chat. That would be quite good, wouldn't it? I bet he's got some stories to tell.
He made 119 league appearances for us in total. Wishing very well in his retirement. From what I gather, his injury was causing him quite a lot of problems outside of football. And at that point, what quality of life do you have just to say that you're a professional footballer for one more season? If it starts affecting your home life, then that's when it's time to walk away, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he does, because I think he's been coaching quite a bit with Cardiff Met, I think, hasn't he, doing his badges, so he might pop up yet. And then if we thought that was a bit of a bolt out of the blue, somehow Gillingham decided, after seeing Cameron Antwi stick one in their net, they thought, we best buy him. He's the goal scoring midfielder we need to take to promotion, and allegedly pay some money for him. What do we think of that? I was a bit surprised. I mean, from my point of view, he's one of the most maddening footballers I've seen in a long time. He's clearly got talent and ability. From everything we hear, he's the best player on the training pitch. Yeah, KD does something amazing, but I can tell you now, doesn't like a wet Wednesday night in Atkinson, because he will not run back and tackle any player who's gone past him, and that for me is criminal. So, Ed,
I'm not sure who I'm more impressed by. Cameron Antwi's agent or Hugh Jenkins for getting a fee out of him. I mean, both of those people have hugely impressed me this week. As you say, he's clearly technically talented, and we know that he can play. At Cardiff in the Spotifan Trophy back in September, October, he was completely bewitching. But like you say, he just didn't produce regularly enough or well enough. And at times, I think if we're honest, his body language and his attitude suggested he didn't really want to be here. But there we are. I mean, I think the hope is that Fuchs will now have the resources to bring in a replacement central midfielder, because we're light there, especially as Fuchs doesn't seem to fancy Whitmore. So maybe we will finally get that elusive midfield bastard who we desperately need.
With both those wages off the books and a transfer fee, I think something will happen in the next few days. Reese.
Any time that we get a fee for a player is excellent. It's someone who's out of contract in the summer, so was probably had one eye elsewhere anyway. So when you get a fee for a player at this level, that's always a success. We won't be talking hundreds of thousands. We're probably talking thousands, probably not even tens of thousands. But it does free up some of the wage. Fuchs was talking this week about how the squad maybe needs to be trimmed down a little. That may include the likes of Kai Whitmore, as he doesn't seem very fancied. Keenan Patton might be coming back soon. I don't know whether he's back in training or anything yet, but you probably think he might get a loan to improve his fitness after a long time out. Like Ed said, Antwi on his day looked like a player, but he didn't have his day often enough. It's just that consistency, and that's kind of what we've struggled with in this side for quite a while, is that we've got players who on their day are good, but they are not consistently operating at League Two, and that's why we find ourselves in the situation we are.
Jack.
Very, 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 very surprised we got a fee for him, and I would love to know, any insiders, drop us a DM. How much did they pay? And how much
I heard it was some
secretly
Morrison's
laughing?
vouchers and a Mars bar, but
That's still more than I thought we would have got. I mean, I was waiting to kind of drive him to Kent myself, but yeah, it's unbelievable business.
I jokingly said in the WhatsApp group that we didn't disclose who paid the fee for him.
So you reckon Hughes bunged him some money to take him off our hands?
I mean, stranger things have happened, right?
Well, one of his replacements, Mr. Biggins, has already looked like he's got more energy in 2 games than I saw Antwi in the 64 he's played for us. So Jack and Alfie were at the game today. A win! Come on!
He sounds like a character from Carry On, doesn't he? Mr. Biggins. He seems to be, dare I say it, a bit of a bastard, which is what we're sorely lacking.
Or is he Reese's space eater? Because he gets around the park a bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, the midfield was a bit hard to read, but it sort of settled down to Brennan and Smith at the bottom of a sort of central triangle with Biggins doing what he wants at the tip of that triangle, going forward wherever he likes. The tackle that you put in for a yellow card in the 4th minute was absolutely abominable. I think if a single stud was showing it was instant red, I couldn't believe it wasn't instant red, but there you go. We got away with it, and he was an absolute nightmare for them. He was, again, someone, if you watch them on the opposite side, you'd probably want to sign him just because he had that little niggle, that little nous, not quite onion in the curry. He was almost like the Naga chili in the curry. You could feel him. So I was quite impressed with him, and he was a promising signing.
Now, we switched formations again. We went 4 at the back today, whereas we did 5 last week. And I was fully expecting to see either two prongs of the trident or the full trident up front today. I was thinking we'd see New Jameson, Tan, and King Kroll all playing. None of them on the pitch yet as a starting. Is that showing our strength? What's going on, Alfie? Did you think they'd be on from the start, or what's happening up front?
I think even though we lost last Saturday, I think maybe they wanted to keep the same sort of 11 if they could. I thought Kroll may have come in, but he did well when he came off the bench. Apoku was pressing quite a lot. I don't remember him having a shot, but he did the off-the-ball work, which we've missed from a few strikers over the last few seasons. But yeah, Tan, I think he came on 5 minutes to go. But yeah, Biggins really impressed with him. The way that last week, he could have had a couple. Today, as Jack said, that tackle. I actually thought it was a clean tackle. I love those sort of tackles. But no, he just didn't start running.
Reese, what did you make of it all today?
Well, I was wondering about Kroll, whether it's just a bit of a fitness thing. So he's obviously come from semi-pro ranks. He's now gone full-time for the first time in a few years since leaving Cardiff. Is it a adjustment period, get him used to training every day, get him up to that fitness standard he needs to be for League Two? He got, 20 minutes today? Maybe he'll get a little bit longer, bit of a run on Tuesday night, but I think asking someone to come straight in from the Welsh League mid-season and hit the ground running into League Two, it's probably a bit of an ask. So I think it makes sense to give him a couple of weeks in training, just get him right up to the level that give him the best chance to make a positive impact.
From my vantage point, we were watching Kroll quite intensely. After the Amber Army were singing, "You're indestructible, always believe it, Jimmy Crow." I bloody love that. That was brilliant. He struggled with the press. He seemed to be, and I know nothing of Penabon, seemed to come in as a bit of a target man. And the Fuchsian press that they wanted a poker to do, he looked a bit puffy after 20 minutes. He looked a bit knackered. So I think you're right, Reese. It is a bit of fitness I think he needs.
Can I just say, I think the James Kroll Spandau Ballet gold chant, Dave Arastidion is taking the credit for that, because he suggested it before I think anyone else did. We turned it into a graphic, and then it seems to have taken off. So he demands cultural copyright on that one.
Yeah, totally. I think you're absolutely right, Reese. I think we've got a really good player here, because I think he's got a bit of narc about him as well. I mean, he's got a bit of nastiness about him, which is no bad thing in a front man. But I think placing our house on a 21-year-old coming out the Welsh leagues to save us is a big ask in it. So let's hope that it's a collective effort that's going to keep us up, and he will chip in as we go through the season. But let's get him up to pace. And I just want to say, talking of tackles, Matt Baker's tackle towards the end of that game, when the ball was right over the top, we were 2-1, we were only winning 2-1, we were hanging on. I thought I was sitting there thinking, not again. He's clean through. Baker's come into the box from behind and hooked his leg back. Could have given anything could have happened there. So it was an absolutely brilliant tackle. So yeah, big props to him, I would say.
Those last 15 minutes, I don't know if you felt the same way. It was like we were going to war. The crowd, I haven't heard the Hazel that loud all season. We needed this. I think people are starting to sort of tweak on the fact we are on the brink of an existential crisis here. We are fighting for our lives. And the last time me and Ed were sat at the back of the Hazel a couple of games ago, I was bemoaning the lack of sort of sense that the fact that we need to go now. We need to start revving those engines. We really sorely need to show some absolute metal. And God, did we see that with Biggins' tackle and like I said, Clark's tackle at the end.
It's massive.
It was a big 15 minutes, especially when we went 2-1 down, or they scored a goal against us, to make it 2-1. And it seemed to unlock Sammy Braybrook. He seemed to just come alive in those last 15 minutes. And it was Sammy Braybrook of old, pinging passes wherever he liked, sort of following the ball wherever it went and asking for the ball, being very, very positive with it. And I thought, God, here we go. I can see it written in the stars. We're going to have a Sammy Braybrook assist. Almost happened, but we did well. And these are the results you remember at the end of the season when you stay up. Is that, can you remember when that last-ditch attempt tackle came in and he hooked the ball away and the Hazel roared and yeah, it's good.
I think that result is a turning point in our season. I really do. Coming off the back of last week's agonising defeat in injury time, this week we held on. We've got a game Tuesday night against Accrington. They haven't got much to play for, really. They're not going to bring many down on a Tuesday night. We need to get that place rocking. We need to get at them. We need to win that game. That'll be 3 wins on the bounce. It'll take us out of the relegation zone. And then we go to the gas next week for a massive derby. This is what it's all about now, isn't it? Everything counts. Everything counts.
I think our fear at Christmas was that we were going to start falling away from the pack. I know last week we came away with nothing, but we were probably worth a point at least. And the bottom 6, Barrow down to Harrogate, you could kind of throw a blanket over them. So we're still in that fight, and we're not bottom by 11 points at Christmas. We're 1 point from safety away from Bristol Rovers. We're 4 points off Barrow in 19th. So, any of those bottom 6, we're right in there. And I think the performances under Fuchs the last couple of games have been really positive. But I think there was games at the start of the season where we had positive performances under Di Hughes that didn't result in any points. And I think now's the time to really turn the screw, isn't it? Where those performances need to be points. That's crunch time now. So we really need to, like Jack said, rev those engines and kick on.
Yeah, but I think the positive signs to me are we are improving. I think some of the sides slightly above us are getting worse. We're improving. Our more experienced players are coming back. If they can stay fit. So Shepherd, I thought, had a great game today, as an example. The signings we've made look positive. Biggins we've talked about. And I think we have, as we've already mentioned, created a little bit of headroom in the budget that we can bring somebody or maybe even 2 players in this week. That would be that, so I think we're going in the right direction. So fingers crossed. Okay. We'd like to finish, I think, now, just have a bit of a wrap up. I just want to say from all of us, look, Ollie, we've talked about him today, but it's not just one conversation. Ollie will not be forgotten. He won't be forgotten by the podcast or the wider fan base. And we've got some ideas that we've been chatting about how we can keep Ollie's memory alive, not just through the GoFundMe that we're doing. We've got some plans. We'll announce more on that in due course. I do also want to say a massive thanks to the supporters club today, the club overall, every single supporter, both from Newport and Chesterfield, alongside the players and the staff of both teams who joined in the minutes of applause at the game in the 23rd minute in memory of Ollie. I raised a glass at home, was watching on. I really wish I could have been there. It was a massively touching moment. So big thanks to everybody from all clubs who joined in for that. I think it's a really welcome reminder for everybody to enjoy every game, even when it's rubbish. Hold that embrace a moment longer with the people that you celebrate with when County score. You never know when might be the last time you get to do it. Hold that thought. Until next time, look after yourselves, folks. Look after each other. As always, keep it county.